Hey everybody, welcome to the morning meeting. Dan, Sean, and I are here to walk you through the day on what could be the biggest day of the entire Trump presidency. Could be. We'll see. Lots going on, and we'll focus mostly on Iran, but we're also going to talk about reconciliation a little bit, and of course, deportation. And a reminder that 7:30 tonight, Cancer Decoded premieres on Two-Way. We'll talk more about that. But again, our main focus will be on Iran. The president came back late last night, left the G7 105, please, late at night, all of a sudden, and rushed back to Washington. But presidents who take vacations or travel, they always say, well, of course, the president's president wherever he goes, and he can be president from anywhere. But this event necessitated coming back late last night at Andrews 106. Sean, the president can be president from anywhere. Why does he need to be back for this?
Because I think it's that consequential. And there's a big difference between doing a VTC in a secure skiff overseas. They make them wherever you go, and they're usually tented or, I mean, so it's not exactly user friendly, to put it mildly.
Yeah.
Obviously, I think the Canadian Embassy would have one. Again, he could go there, but there is something very different about having, especially a team this big, all of your key military advisors, your national security advisors, state, except all that kind of stuff in one room where you can go back and forth in a much more dynamic way. It's a very different dynamic in the Situation Room, in that large conference room, in the Situation Room, I should say, versus a VTC where you've got a handful of people maybe in the tent or the makeshift skiff, and then everyone else on screens. So, and I do believe that when you're talking about this level of action, it's not just like you've got the chairman of the Joint Chiefs or the chief of staff of the army. You're bringing in very specific experts in that precision munition weaponry to say, this is what we can do. This is how we can do it. This is the battle damage assessment that we believe will occur, et cetera, et cetera. So these are the kind of conversations you want to have around a table with people to give feedback and immediate responses to. This isn't a watch where the president's sitting there watching a military action, and you can do that. You know, we did that at Mar-a-Lago, where you're watching an action happen. You're literally, this is the decision-making process, and it's smart to be around a table.
Yeah, face to face, no substitute, and the technology in the sit room is just not matched on the road. And so we'll see when they're actually meeting. 10:30 on the Hill, Tulsi Gabbard, CIA Director Radcliffe, and Acting NSA Director Hartman are testifying in a closed appropriations subcommittee hearing on the budget. Still unexplained to my ears is Gabbard's Director Gabbard's position a few months ago that Iran was not closing in on a nuclear device. She'll be asked about that today for sure. Senate is in, House is out.
Can I just real quick? The timing of that was what threw me yesterday. If you have Radcliffe, her, and the NSA, all in one room, then that meeting can't occur until like at least noon. In the sit room, you can't have a meeting on this kind of. So the question is, does it go through or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I also think one of the reasons he wants to be there is if something goes wrong, you don't want to be in a meeting where they're coming up and pulling you. The optics of like you're doing something else, they're pulling you out, you're huddling. I think you're in your comfortable place where you can make your decision. And if you need to start pulling levers because something's gone haywire, you're there.
Right.
Yeah. The senators are getting a classified security briefing at 9:30 on the aftermath of the Minnesota shootings. Chuck Schumer and some other Democrats at 11 are holding a press conference on abortion, and the Senate lunches are today.
Can I just one thing? We talked about this yesterday, and I'll keep it bipartisan for the sake of this. I started thinking after our conversation yesterday about these hearings, these classified briefings that they're going to have on their security. And I understand the concern of state and local and any public official, even, judges included and all that. If there's one thing I think they could all do, it's to have something where it says, like, we all agree that we have a First Amendment right to express ourselves, to disagree, but that violence is wrong, that going after somebody is wrong. These stunts that people are doing, this is when people look at them and say, oh, okay, I'll take it one step further. I'll go. And I think all of them together could actually do one smart thing and show in unity that this violence is not acceptable, that there is a proper and smart way to express your concerns or whatever with the government, but that does not entail threatening elected officials or public officials, or going at or getting in their faces, as Maxine Waters suggested. That's not how you do it.
Dan, anything you want to say about this topic?
I don't know. I mean, it would be great if there was bipartisan agreement and both sides signed on to that, including the president.
Yeah. So the president shook things up last night with the tweet, social media post, rather, True Social post you've all seen, number 110. Macron suggested there were going to be peace talks, and the president put on True Social, no, everybody should be getting out of Tehran. Stay tuned. Much bigger than a ceasefire. Then last night on the plane flying back, he talked to the press. This is the president on 107, please.
Are you open to negotiating with the Iranians right now, or do you want to wait?
I don't know. I've been negotiating. I told them to do the deal. They should have done the deal. Their cities have been blown to pieces. Have lost a lot of people. They should have done the deal. I told them do the deal. So I don't know. I'm not too much in a mood to negotiate now.
All right, Israeli Defense Minister this morning 113. Don't know if this was a press conference or a statement, whatever, but this is the Defense Minister, Israel Katz, 107. Today, we're about to strike very significant targets, strategic, governmental, and infrastructure inside Tehran. The IDF spokesman will issue an evacuation call in Persian. There are over 10 nuclear targets in the Tehran area. We're on the verge of destroying them. Fordo is also a matter that will certainly be addressed. That's, of course, the nuclear facility that is widely believed to be not destroyable by the Israelis, but would require American B-52s and bunker-busting bombs. I believe that unless Iran surrenders in the next 48 hours, the United States, in conjunction with Israel, will engage in military action. Dan, where are you?
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. I mean, you wonder, is that psychological kind of warfare against the Iranians to cave or to throw them off because they're going to go somewhere else. But it certainly seems like something is imminent. We moved refueling equipment, more aircraft carriers into the region recently. Those would be necessary to fly the B-52s with the bunker busters in there. And this is a historic moment. I mean, you're seeing both parties, the kind of progressive wing is starting to say, like, oh my God, what are we about to do? The Tucker Carlson wing and Marjorie Taylor Greene saying this is not America first. I think we're at this fork in the road.
Yeah, we'll get to MAGA in a second, but Sean, where do you think we are in terms of U.S. military involvement?
I would say we're leaning towards involvement. The president, when he says he wants a deal, people need to understand that he truly does that. That is where his head's at. I think he does. He is not a fan of destruction and bombing and going into wars. It's antithetical to everything that he believes. But I think the $1 million question is, are we past that point of no return where he kind of indicated last night? I still believe that this is a negotiating tactic. He wants the Iranians to know that they're out of options. He's willing to go this far. You have a final card to play if you want to play it. That's where I firmly believe his head is at, that he wants this deal to happen. He does not want this because he understands there's a lot of potential consequences and outcomes from dropping a bomb of this nature. I think the bigger question, we talked about it yesterday, is are the Israelis giving him assurance about what a regime change would look like, who would manage it, all that kind of stuff, because it goes back to the Pottery Barn saying of who, if you break it, you own it. And I think he's very reluctant to do that. And this is where I think people don't appreciate the fact that, like, this is 80% negotiating tactic by him to get them back to the table. But we are at a point where I think he's expressed it well. He gave them a bunch of opportunities to take a deal. They insist on having nuclear capabilities, quote unquote, for commercial purposes, which is ridiculous. And so this is one of those moments that I think a lot of people, both Israel and others, including many in our own country, are saying, to seize this moment, get rid of them.
Yeah. I think the challenge, though, is he may want a deal still in his bones, but I don't think Netanyahu does in any way.
Oh, yeah.
It is
And
time-
100%. He's the only one. You're
And
absolutely right.
I think that's the problem. And I said this yesterday. I think this has gone so well for Israel. They are so dominant right now. They are so on a front foot. They control the skies over Iran. They've knocked out they believe they've completely knocked out their air defenses. They're decapitating the leadership. I think the problem for Trump now is, can you really get in front of this train? Can you really get, I mean, obviously they need our help, but I think the public pressure now to go for the kill is so overwhelming that I think Trump's getting kind of dragged into this.
Yeah, the other piece of it is all the reporting in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere about what the Iranians are saying.
Yeah.
It's weak tea. They're not offering to surrender. They're not offering to give up the nuclear program. They're just saying, get Israel to stop bombing us and let's talk. You'll recall that James Baker met with Tariq Aziz shortly before the Gulf War for one last check-in. And I think if the Iranians get that, and I don't think they will, because I don't think there's no indication that they're offering anything significant to change the trajectory of where we're headed. So I think it's possible there'll be a meeting with Witkoff, maybe even J.D. Vance, but I doubt it, because I think enough set in motion that the president's not going to be interested in a stall tactic. If you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hand. On a day when Marjorie Taylor Greene and David Hogg seem in strong agreement, I'll remind you that peace, love, and understanding is vital here. So if you do want to get in the conversation, please follow that stricture. And if you're going to write in the chat, why not avoid smack? Why not be in the spirit of this serious national moment, not attack other people? I know a lot of you feel strongly that there should be no wars, and that the U.S. should stay out of it, and we'd love to hear that point of view. But I also know that many responsible people in the country, including maybe the president, the MAGA president, believe that this is a moment that requires action. And as Michael Granoff correctly notes, if you break something at Pottery Barn, you do not have to buy it. So
it often gets attributed to that, and I know Powell didn't like it himself, but
it's a shorthand. All right, let's talk about war powers before we talk about MAGA. I have covered Congress and the presidency now for several decades, and I can tell you that members of Congress are feckless. They demand to be treated like a co-equal branch. They demand the war power function, and they do nothing to restrain executives of either party who on a regular basis engage in clear war activity without getting Congress's approval in advance, and sometimes without notifying Congress in advance. Gregory Meeks was on TV this morning saying he's not been briefed. There was one early on staff briefing. So this will be the easiest question of the week. Dan, will the Trump administration feel constrained by the Constitution and allow Congress to pass a war powers resolution before they engage in any military activity?
No, not a chance. They do not care. But what I want to watch is, what do the 2028ers in both parties do this week?
J.D. Vance, who has not been very active on Twitter since this started, just tweeted something about some political attack by someone referencing Ron DeSantis. So he's still quiet. Sean, will this president and this White House Office of Legal Counsel say, well, of course we need to go get a war authorization before we use force?
This president will act the same way that every modern president has acted with respect to that act.
Okay. Thank you for that. I think it's unfortunate, because I think an unfettered executive can engage in activity like this that doesn't necessarily serve the public interest. But I blame Congress, not the executive, because Congress has been feckless and useless in maintaining their prerogatives.
I will say
during the Iraq War, they spoke up. I mean, they did. They did insist, and both parties kind of agreed we got to have this vote. It was hung around Democrats' necks in 2004.
And the president at the time said, you can do it if you want, but I will be bound by it. So Sean.
Well, and I will say this: what will be fascinating to me, as far as going forward, this discussion that we're having now, is, as I said correctly, this act hasn't meant anything in modern history to any president of either party. And if the media starts now and the left actually acting like this now matters, that will show you once again how much Trump derangement syndrome they have. No one cared about it with respect to any other modern president in their use of the military force in America's national interest. And if they suddenly think it's now important, it will once again be another tell on how out of touch.
Oh, Sean, I disagree. The media was all over in 2002 that Bush
Correct.
had to
Correct.
go
Correct.
to Congress. They were super aggressive about
Well,
this.
but I will say this: the other thing that matters, and this is where I don't want to jump the gun on subjects, but there is a misreading, I believe, of America First intervention.
Hold on before we get to that.
No, well, I'll say it in this way without jumping the shark here, which is this is not, if the president's ultimate decision today is I'm going to help Israel execute, that is very different in terms of War Powers Act than if we send U.S. troops and assets into the area of response, the AOR.
Yeah.
That's a very, very different.
Totally agree. So let me just set this up. I'm bombarded with people in the last 3 days telling me, oh, look what Tucker said. The president's in a bind. I don't think the president cares what Tucker or anyone in MAGA thinks about this right now. And this morning, the White House put out a lengthy press release. This is 115, chronicling all the times as president and as a candidate, Donald Trump said Iran will not be allowed to have nuclear weapons. This is go ahead and just scroll it through. You'll see some White House researcher got to spend their day putting this together. President's clearly stated no fewer than a dozen times that Iran cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. So there's all the times he said it as president with citations. And then you'll see a little further down, it's all the times he said it as a candidate. The president would like to frame this as very simple, binary. Iran is about to have nuclear weapons. They can't. And so someone needs to do something about it. And that means the United States has to help Israel, which of course has got an existential concern about this. In addition, you have opposition. And as I said, I don't think this is a time. He's not running for re-election. He doesn't need anything from MAGA. He's crossed MAGA in the past. So here you have Marjorie Taylor Greene, 108, standing up for Tucker, saying Tucker's her great friend. He's more popular since he left Fox. That's her apparent reference to the president yesterday mocking Tucker's reach. If we don't fight for our own country and our own people, then we will no longer have a country for our children and grandchildren. Foreign wars, intervention, regime change, put America last, kill innocent people, are making us broke and all ultimately lead to our destruction. Tell that to the people in Tel Aviv who would rather Iran not have a nuclear weapon. Now, as I said earlier, Marjorie Taylor Greene sounds a lot like David Hogg and vice versa. Here's David Hogg, outgoing DNC vice chair and progressive extraordinaire. Any Democrat who supports this war with Iran needs to be primaried. Our generation grew up going through two multi-trillion-dollar wars we should have never been involved in. We are not effing going back to that. If you think this is a good idea, read a history book. This is the back to the Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump coalition of the far left and the far right against forever wars. But as Sean, you said, this is not a forever war. This is a simple binary. It's a moment where Iran is weaker than it's been in the last several decades. It's a moment where Israel, through last year's action and the actions of the last few days, have now got supremacy over airspace over Iran. And it's a moment when the United States has an opportunity to rid the world not just of a bad actor, but in some ways, after Putin, the worst actor. So do you agree with me? How do you feel about my view that the president in this case is not really concerned with what that branch of MAGA thinks?
I don't think it's true. I think he does care. There's a big difference. I think at the end of the day, this is why this sort of discussion, there are equal number of MAGA folks on the other side as well. As you mentioned, Laura Loomer, Bannon's a little bit more unequivocal. I think I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I don't think he's as hard as Tucker right now. That this is a split decision. So this is like when people say the president didn't listen to so-and-so. Well, if there's two camps, he clearly listened to someone. I think there is a split in some of the MAGA base. And as I said a moment ago, I think there's also a misread. There is a difference. He's not sending a battalion of Marines over there to fight this war. He is not sending a brigade of U.S. soldiers, or like, that's very different than putting boots on the ground, sending over pallets of cash. I think what he is doing is consistent with the America First principles of national security, protecting our interests. And frankly, at the end of the day, allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon who chants death to America and stopping them from doing this is 100% consistent with America First. Not getting blown up is pretty solidly America First.
Dan, let me ask you about the progressives. Will they be putting pressure on Democratic leaders and electeds at the higher levels to oppose this action, or is that divide equally clear?
I think for now it's equally clear. I mean, I'm going to watch people like AOC and the Squad and some of the more vocal progressives who so far are still focused on immigration, whatever we think of that, and not on this. Look, I actually disagree, Mark. I think Trump cares a great deal about MAGA. It's why he is lashing out on X. It's why they instructed somebody to put that fact sheet out. If you don't care, you don't bother to.
Well, I spoke in shorthand. He's not going to be persuaded by the people who say this isn't the right moment.
I don't know about that, because I think, look, you guys are trying to split a hair about whether this is a full, an invasion with our troops or whatnot, or just kind of a little bit of side assistance. It's true. It might just be we're going to provide B-52s that are 50,000 feet in the air. They're unlikely to get shot. They drop the bombs and they return. The challenge, like it is with Iraq, is what happens after. Let's say it's as successful as we hope. They decapitate the leadership. They're gone. Somebody Versailles style shows up, signs a peace deal, and everyone goes on. Now you have to rebuild Iran. Who's going to pay for it?
Saudis.
Who's going to ensure that it's stable? Because somebody's going to try to rise up.
The Iranian middle class.
With what arms and with what incentive? Like, okay, we hope, because that's exactly what George W. Bush thought in Iraq.
Yeah, but then he put Americans on the ground and tried to manufacture mini Thomas Jeffersons.
Okay, so who is going to be on the ground?
Mossad.
The CIA couldn't handle Iraq. They needed troops. So who's providing all the troops? Who's providing all the weapons? Let's say Israel hits some speed bumps. Who do they call? Daddy. Daddy sits at 1,600
Saudis.
With what military?
Well, Saudis have a military.
The Saudi royal family will send Saudi troops to sit with Israel in Iran, and they're not going to worry about what's happening at home in Riyadh. It is Uncle Sam that's going to provide guys, you know where this goes.
You're wedded to the status quo, Dan. You're wedded to a nuclear armed Iran and a seller of terrorism around the world.
Mark, I'm not in any way, shape, or form wed to it. You guys are trying to convince yourselves that the U.S. does it, that this is not an invasion. Do you
want the risk, or do you want the status quo?
Oh, I am willing to do it, but Trump needs to look MAGA in the face and everyone on this and you guys and say, we're going in.
Yeah, but Dan, this is where I think today that's what the meetings are about. Like, Trump's going to say, I'm not doing this if what Dan says is going to happen.
You can't get a little pregnant, guys. Can't get a little pregnant.
You can't reject a bold change and not say you're for the status quo, because there's no third option.
But guys, I'm not rejecting it. What I'm saying is you're trying to split the difference to say we're not really part of an invasion. My point is, to all the people out there, I am willing to take this risk. But as a country, the question then is, are we willing to take the full risk Iraq style? Right. That's what he's debating.
I don't disagree. Look, I think what is happening.
I would say yes.
So that is the discussion that is happening.
Yep.
And I think that is why the president is getting his team together and saying, if we do this, if I green light this thing, walk me through what happens. I think that what you're saying is right. And he's getting to a point where he's saying, all right, I want to know who's going to be on there if this happens, who's going to take care. I mean, that's literally the conversation that's going to happen in the sit room today.
And I hope, and Dan, to your point, I hope someone in the sit room says, Mr. President, if we do this, there could be bloody, violent, prolonged revolution and counter-revolution in Iran that leads to a new leader who's no better than what we have now, who then tries to restart the nuclear program. That could happen.
Right.
You got to be honest, that could happen. But as long as there are no American troops on the ground, and as long as the current regime is eliminated and the nuclear program is eliminated, it's the only answer, rather than what the Israeli intelligence says is true, which is Iran is about to have intercontinental ballistic missiles that can be armed with nuclear warheads. And that's not acceptable. It's not been acceptable to our last 5 presidents, and the last 4 didn't solve it. This one might have. We'll get your questions on this matter in a moment.
I agree with that 100%. I want to be very clear about that.
Let's cover two more things real quick, and then we'll move to people's questions. And again, please raise your hand if you want to be on the conversation. House Finance put out their marker on reconciliation yesterday. It has a ton of things that differ pretty significantly from the House bill, and you heard a number of senators, including many who normally aren't gloom and doom about passage, say they're really worried about this passing, and certainly it's not going to pass on the current timetable. We still don't know the X date on debt ceiling from Scott Bessent, and that will really be the forcing mechanism, regardless of talk of concern and sky is falling by senators. So, Sean, where did the Senate Finance mark leave us now in terms of the prospects of passage, at least in the Senate?
It definitely was a step backwards. I actually am surprised that John Thune let this go forward. I think this was a shock to a lot of folks in how wide the gap now is between the House and the Senate on a lot of key provisions. We've talked a lot about the state and local tax deduction, commonly referred to as SALT. Look, going back to 10,000 from 40, where they had fought hard to get, I couldn't believe they settled at 40. As you guys know, I think I'm on the record saying that I thought the number would be 50. Going back to 10 just took 4 or 5 votes at least off the table. Then they scaled back the Inflation
Medicaid.
Reduction Act, rollback the EV stuff. Then they hit further on Medicaid. I mean, like
Also, some of the Trump tax cuts.
right, the Trump tax cuts. They did make 3 of the business tax cuts permanent, but then no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security. So they defied, in my opinion, the White House on this. And I can't believe that Thune let this thing go out forward. I actually thought that this was going to come out much closer to where the House was. We'd have some cute little tete-a-tete and everything would be done. This just bought more time and further reinforces the need for the C word.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that. No,
I know.
There'll be no conference committee. There'll be no conference committee. But it's also the case that this bill, if it passed like this, you couldn't jam the House with this bill.
No, that's what. But it actually took. Here's the kicker. I think what was funny to me was they even took a step back in the Senate. You went further away from Ron Johnson, probably Olympians. I mean, you made it harder to get those votes back.
Yeah.
And Ron Johnson, by the way, I think had been holding his powder, keeping his powder dry for a few weeks, willing to play ball. He had toned down the rhetoric. I actually thought that they had really worked Ron Johnson well, James Blair and others from the White House. And to do this was basically, I think, a slap in the face of a lot of senators that were trying to get there.
Yes,
Well,
damn.
and Josh Hawley, who has been so vocal about Medicaid, and Missouri hospitals would get utterly obliterated in this bill, as would several southern states where you need people. I think it's still very likely this goes through because Trump has not leaned in. The House was kind of stuck until Trump leaned in and just got everybody on board. Now, the problem is what we just talked about. If, and God forbid, I hope this doesn't happen. Hopefully it is super successful very quickly. But if he gets bogged down dealing with events overseas and then tries to turn around and roll the Senate, that's where it gets hard. So I still think this happens because Trump makes it happen.
I got to ask you about very likely. We've all been close to mortal lock. Is very likely a downgrade for you?
No, I mortal lock.
Mortal lock. Sean, still mortal lock to pass the House and the Senate?
Well, define that, please.
Will the president will the president pass a reconciliation bill along the lines of these 2 disparate bills into law this year?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
This just bought. I mean, look, I've always believed that this is going to be closer to August, if not the first 2 weeks. They hold Congress in for a week or 2 or something like that, and threaten with their recess. I think that's always the biggest backstop for any member of Congress, not being able to have some time away. So I think you just bought at least a few more weeks of time.
Chris
Let me ask you
Lasavita-
guys this though, for both of you, because we keep talking about MAGA hasn't had the full power of MAGA hasn't been turned on this bill yet. We all think if they needed to, the Charlie Kirks and everyone. What if there's problems overseas?
They still do it. They're master compartmentalizers.
Okay, so Tucker and everyone.
Master compartmentalizers.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You can be. I mean, there's plenty of people. You think about the MAGA movement alone, who are just bought in because of Make America Healthy Again. So the compartmentalizing is Trump does it better than anyone, and then the MAGA movement is a close second.
Okay.
Yeah. Chris Lasavita tweeted that there's some big ad campaign coming in support of reconciliation. I didn't have time to look into it, but they do have cards to play, as Sean said, or as you
Sure.
said, Dan, not just the president, but allies. All right, last topic. Amazingly, the president has flip-flopped again on whether to deport people in ag and hospitality. The Washington Post reporting today that the change of the change is now changed, and that's back on. And there's all sorts of, for this term of Trump, unusual semi-public finger pointing about how the agriculture secretary bypassed Stephen Miller, who's now reasserted his authority, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Dan, I was just a simple yes, no on this one, and then we'll get the questions. Will the president change again, or is this it?
Yes.
He'll change again.
Yes, he will. And
Yes.
because I'm pulling a Sean Spicer, just 30 seconds. For the love of God, Democratic Party, drive the wedge through them. Get your you-know-what together.
But what should their position be? Don't deport people in hospitality and ag?
Yes, that the people have been here for 20 years and are a fabric of our country. We will win that argument.
Weak on the border.
Nope,
Weak on the
because
border.
we'll give $50 billion for the border. We'll go all in on that.
They should be having press conferences with the hospitality industry and the ag community.
Instead of Chuck Schumer doing an abortion thing today, not that that's not an important issue, but God damn it, drive the wedge.
Sean, set a good example. One word answer. Will he flip again back to saying he's not going to deport people from ag and hospitality?
And we mean just this week, by the way.
Yeah,
Sean.
yeah, just this week. Just this week.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
No. All right. I agree.
And I will say this,
He's
just
sticking with this
so
one.
I have the asterisk, because I want to be clear. What I think the ultimate guidance will be is if you roll them up, got it, but don't start there. Start in the big cities, work your way down. So I'm just saying
by 2029, essentially.
Right.
Okay,
My point is
Yeah,
publicly
exactly.
he needs to do this for the base, but I don't think when the guidance is given to the ICE agents, et cetera, it's going to be go hunting where there's more people, big blue cities.
Did Michael Granoff log off right when I was about to call on him?
He did.
Michael,
He just sent us the text
Michael.
of what to say.
What did he? Well, read it.
We went to
Okay.
Pottery Barn.
All right. The quote, I have to run to a call in a minute in case you see this during the program. Here are my 3 points I wanted to make. One, I wouldn't be so sure the U.S. is leaning in. We already had one head fake in the last week.
True.
2, Israelis are far from universal on the desirability of U.S. involvement. Many really oppose it because we defend ourselves by ourselves, but we wouldn't mind borrowing the keys to the B-2 for one night. 3, Israel is taking some measure to strengthen the focus of freedom in Iran. Keep an eye on dissidents coming out of prison, on internal regime opposition that is very, very Western friendly, i.e. go from hanging gays on cranes to pride parades. Okay.
Awesome. And I never read the chat, but I glanced at it. You can only text in your notes if you're in Tel Aviv. That's the rule. All right. We can't get that, Michael, but we've got this, Michael. Michael, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are after you unmute and
Great
what's on your
beard.
mind. There you go.
Yeah, good morning, Michael from Minnesota. I'm just thinking that every option is worse than leaving Iran a nuclear power. And I don't see any way out of that. They're a pariah in the Middle East among their neighbors. So I don't see us probably getting into a boots on the ground situation, but I do think the bunker busters, those things got to happen. And I just really believe that Mossad has a plan to help a new regime put in place. But even if it goes belly up, it's got to be better than a nuclear Iran.
Yep.
Thank you, Michael. Sean.
I agree. I mean, look, the bottom line is when someone's building a nuclear weapon and saying death to America, I don't know how you can't say, hey, we should probably stop them.
Yeah. Dan.
Yeah, I agree. Michael, who did you vote for in 2024 and 2020?
Yeah, I've continued to vote straight line Republican, but not on a right wing basis. There's just some cultural and issues that are really important to me. So that's.
Michael, let me ask you this. Let's say there's no U.S. Boots on the ground, but let's say that we had to provide $50 billion a year for the next couple of years.
Well, if it moves us away from the nuclear Iran, I think it's probably a bargain.
Okay.
Michael, just on another topic, as you're experiencing it, are the tragic political assassinations in your state uniting the state or dividing the state?
Well, I don't want to go there because you know how I vote, but I think a week or so ago, a particular political official talked about getting a lot meaner. And then they turn around and say we're one Minnesota. I don't think that played well. I don't think it's playing well now. I think we need to step back from the politicization of this and realize that the rhetoric is leading them to terrible places. I know some people directly involved, and it's a terrible tragedy. I don't know what more to say about that.
Okay, Michael, thank you. Grateful to you for coming on and for sharing that. And it's a strange state politically, right? Because it used to be pretty bipartisan, and it's become like every other state, divided. And some of your politicians have contributed to divide, as has the president. But I've been really heartened by the signs of togetherness and compassion, not just for those directly affected, but for the whole state. So
We are joined, united in our grief. I'll tell you
yeah,
that.
yes, sir. Thank you for coming on. Grateful to you. Okay. Matt, welcome back. Tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind, please.
Morning, guys. On the road today, calling from what James Carville once referred to as the Alabama portion of Pennsylvania. Hey, I wanted to get your thoughts. You know, with all the open borders during the Biden administration, we have, I guess, a relatively unknown number of Iranian sleeper cells and other terrorists in the U.S. How do you think that's factoring into our calculus on whether we get involved, you know, bombing Fort Al and the other areas that Israel can't reach easily?
Great question. Dan.
Well, to my knowledge, people coming in were not Iranian sleeper cells. We've always worried about this going back to 9/11, that there were Iranian and other countries have, smuggled people in. It has to be a consideration. I believe the somebody in the Iranian government tweeted that everybody involved in this will feel it, which is an indirect way of saying America, and to which Netanyahu responded, first it was Tel Aviv, then it'll be New York. So it's a concern. I mean, I live in New York City. It's a concern. The synagogues down the street look like Fort Knox right now.
Really?
Sean.
It's a great question. I mean, you think about after Soleimani was killed, that they put the equivalent of like a fatwa on John Bolton, Mike Pompeo, Brian Hook, and have made it clear they want to kill them. So I think it's a very, very real issue domestically, both in terms of high profile people, and then after, if some action would be taken, what would they do potentially here? And it just takes a lone wolf to do something very, very bad and tragic.
And by the way, it's not just here. I'd watch our embassies all over the world. I mean, remember in 1999 when they struck our embassies as a precursor to 9/11, they look for the soft spot.
Yep.
Speaking of embassy, Sean, you were right yesterday. It was not the U.S. embassy that was hit. It's the former embassy in Tel Aviv. Matt, thank you. Grateful to you. Travel safely. Joshua, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind for the group.
Hey everybody, it's Josh from Norfolk. Just getting started with my work day. Work from home 4 days a week. Awesome.
Josh, how long you live there?
In Norfolk?
Yeah.
I've been in the area since 2013 when I came up to law school from William and Mary. Professor Kinney. And but I've lived in Norfolk for the past 2 years. So I like living in downtown Norfolk. But
if you say Norfolk, you're generally not a native.
Correct. Yeah. Not Norfolk.
Sorry, there you go.
Norfolk.
There you go.
Yeah, Norfolk. Let me get my Tidewater accent going on. Sean, would you believe that the only Navy Federals around here are on base or in Chesapeake?
Where else would you? I mean, I guess you could have one downtown, but I don't know where else you'd want one.
What? Everybody's like affiliated with the Navy around here. You'd think you'd have more credit unions.
Well, I'll
Anyway.
flag
I
it.
was gonna
For
say
him.
Sean's on the
Okay,
board
yeah,
of
anyway.
a
Yeah.
business
Joshua,
opportunity.
Joshua, can't you do it all online?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't deposit cash online. Not yet, anyway.
Are
So,
you selling? Are you selling Pokemon cards? Where are you getting all the cash?
I tell you what,
Oh,
Josh,
no.
for a
Or-
small
or a
transactional
dispensary.
fee.
My hobby is my 90s and 2000s rock cover band.
Oh wow. Okay.
And that's a cash generating business.
Yeah.
Okay. Your secret's
All right.
safe with the
Next
two-way
time I'm there,
community.
I'll drive you on base and we'll
Yeah,
go make a
keep-
deposit.
Keep
Oh,
talking, Josh.
I got my VA card. I'm good. I can get
All
on
right.
base. I don't understand how the we've been talking about the divide between Trump, OG MAGA, and the MAGA movement, but it seems like America First has turned into America Only in the MAGA movement. When you've got people like Tucker Carlson, spouting off his things, and I think we talk about America First, and we need to keep in mind that we live in a world full of bad hombres, and the Iranian regime, if that fell, and I'm not saying boots on the ground. I deployed to Iraq twice. I think this is a totally different situation than Iraq, and anybody who thinks differently probably not thinking clearly about it.
Why do you think
different how?
Yeah.
Totally different than Iraq?
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not saying we couldn't come up with explanations, but we want to hear yours.
Sure. Yeah, my explanation for why. First off, I think the Iranian regime is has much more. How do I phrase this? They have their hands in a lot more pots than Saddam's regime did. Saddam was was a local dictator. With his sons, they were psychopaths, but it wasn't like the Ba'ath Party wasn't a religious movement. It wasn't a movement that had legs outside of Iraq all that much. Iran is involved in Syria. They're involved with the Muslim Brotherhood movements in North Africa. They're involved with Hamas, Hezbollah.
So what's the implication of that?
Doesn't that make it more dangerous?
Yeah. What's the implication of that?
For sure. No, for sure. But I think people are trying to compare U.S. involvement in the potential, in helping Israel and Iran. I think people are trying to compare that to getting into the Iraq war because of weapons of mass destruction and then getting involved in a quagmire of regime change and occupation for 20 years. That's what I think, where I think people are trying to go with that comparison.
Well, because I think all those groups you just mentioned will have a vested interest in the outcome of what comes next. And that's just like they did in Iraq, right? It wasn't the Iraqis that caused us trouble. It was the Iranians and everyone else that funneled in to try to seize control of a vacuum. So the question is, all the groups you just mentioned, all the religious sects that are there, are going to scramble for control, and who's the adult that keeps the lid on it?
I think Iran has some small r Republican roots, and if you got rid of the Shia overlay, I think the people of Iran would be okay.
That's the hope.
Well,
I mean, that's the hope, but that's the same exact language that George W. Bush's team used, literally almost verbatim.
Well, hopefully we have some lessons learned. Hopefully we have some lessons learned there. Okay.
I will say, Mark brought this up at the beginning, just so when Director Gabbard testified in March of 2025, she made it very clear, very publicly, and it's going around now, that that Iran did not have, not only did they not have it, but the intel, the IC community did not believe that they were on a path to developing a nuke. And somehow that bridge is going to have to get crossed, because you can't, I mean, Josh, you brought up the weapon, the WMD, with that as a backdrop. And I agree with your assessment, just so we're clear. But I think that there's going to be a lot of people who say, hey, you guys blew it in Iraq with selling everyone on WMD. And you have a director 3 months ago saying that they're not doing this. What's changed? Right? Because there's two things. This is the bind that I think they're in now is either one, the intel was wrong, or you're not you're not being completely straight with what the threat is now. So I think that they're going to have to explain that threat a little bit more, because I think there is enough people with Iraq in the back of their head saying, we played this game once before and it didn't work out too well.
Yeah.
It's all so confusing. I mean, whether or not Saddam was on the way to some sort of weapon of mass destruction that was less than nuclear, whether he had them and then they moved them, a la, Russia and Syria, circa 2011. I mean, I remember I had some officers when I was deployed, with the Marines who, some battalion level officers who was like, yeah, we found the storehouses, and then poof, nothing ever happened. And now it's all, myth and fable and just a, sort of used as the great American tall tale of the 21st century.
Yep.
And we've had some really spotty, particularly during the Obama administration too, we've had some really, really, really poorly thought out interventions. Libya.
Well, and by the way, at least in Iraq, from when Cheney gave that speech right after, I think it was the end of August at the Veterans of Foreign Wars convention, I think it was in Nashville, until it started in that, the country debated that entire fall of 2022. Should we do this? This is about 48 hours of debate.
Yeah. Joshua, thank you.
Good pull, Dan. Good pull.
Thank you. Well said, Joshua. Thank you so much. All right. Because we care about them both, let's bring in our two house smokers. Ask them to join the cancer special premiere tonight, please. And I have a funny feeling they're going to be on opposite sides of what we're about to discuss. So, Daryl first, tell folks who don't know where you are and what's on your mind, and then Haley.
Thank you very much for calling me on. I'm outside of Philadelphia, and let me just say I love Haley, and we always go back and forth on another Zoom chat that we go on. So pleasantly surprised, but happy to see her on here too. I just want to say I am so disappointed in Dan, or excuse me, and Sean, and you too, Mark. I think you guys are like propagating just a very sort of rosy picture about what's going to happen. I think, Dan, you're 100% right. We're in a very, very precarious position here. If we participate in an attack, or even if we provide the weaponry to take out these nuclear sites, like, what's going to happen to all of our bases and all of our men stationed all around Iran? I mean, we have the Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. That's not very far from Iran. Guys, we're getting drawn into this conflict. The whole goal by Israel was to draw us in. They don't have the weaponry to take out the nuclear sites that are underground. And that's why they're running to Big Daddy America, just like Dan said. Said, please help us fix our problems. And this other thing that I'm furious about is this notion like, oh, there's going to be regime change. It's going to be utopia in Iran once we're done. Guys, they want to do to Iran what they did to Syria. A sectarian conflict, a civil war where hundreds of thousands or millions of people die. This is going to be terrible. We need to stay the heck out of this. Trump is being manipulated by Netanyahu, and I'm ashamed of it. So
Daryl,
if you're worried about one last thing. If you're worried about the midterms, I'm not voting in them. You guys lost me. I'm a lifetime Republican. I voted for Trump 3 times. I'm going to sink you guys. Democrat. That's
Daryl, we've lost your connection a little bit. So let's switch over to Haley. We got your point. Thank you for that. You speak for tens of millions. Haley.
So like I said, me and Daryl, we actually are pretty friendly. So it's great to have us both on because we vehemently disagree, but it's fun. I actually just wanted to point out a poll that I saw yesterday from our friend Mark Caputo, who put it out on Twitter. This was a poll done of Republican Trump voters 2024. The questions are, do you support or oppose the United States providing offensive weapons to help Israel strike Iran military targets? There were five options: strongly support, somewhat oppose, strongly oppose, don't know. 59% strongly support, somewhat support 21%, somewhat oppose 8%. So that's a net positive. Do you support or oppose the United States taking its own direct military actions if necessary to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons? Strongly support 35%, somewhat support 37%, somewhat oppose 9%, strongly oppose 10%. And then the last question, which of the following statements comes closer to your opinion about Iran's influence in the Middle East? Iran is a destabilizing force that sponsors terrorism, threatens our allies, and undermines American interests throughout the region. 80%. The second option was Iran is a regional power that we should engage diplomatically rather than confront militarily to reduce tensions and prevent conflicts. That was 14%. So in my eyes, in the Republican voters, this is an 80-20 issue.
Yeah, this is why I say Daryl speaks for millions, not tens of millions. Just kidding. Just kidding.
What I was saying when I broke up was,
yeah,
I'm a lifetime Republican. I'll vote Democrat in the midterms. I'm going to sink you guys. You guys have betrayed America first. And yeah, maybe it's only 10 or 20%, but that's all it's going to take.
Where do you live, Daryl? Yeah. Just out of curiosity.
I live in Pennsylvania.
I'm going to turn you guys over to Dan and Sean in a moment. But Daryl, what's your alternative? You certainly can't accept the status quo where Iran has ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons and sponsors terrorism all over the world. So what's your proposed solution?
Diplomacy. I mean, Israel killed the negotiators we were about to meet with like 2 days later. Okay, you don't think that was part of the plan? That's how they manipulated Trump into this. We have to negotiate. We have to have a peaceful solution. Otherwise, potentially millions of people are going to die. And I know everyone's like, oh yeah, let's do a regime change. Guys, look at Syria. Look at every country we've done this to. Millions of people die. That's what we're talking about here.
Sean.
So first of all, I want to go back to what I said initially, which is that I believe that first and foremost, President Trump is using this moment as a negotiating tactic. He is forcing them back to the table, basically by making them believe that he will use whatever means necessary. That's just to be clear. I think that's why he got upset with Macron, because he is not trying to get a ceasefire. He is trying to get them back to the table. He's probably more with you, Daryl, than anybody else, just to be clear. I think that's his ultimate goal. That being said, let me just ask you a couple questions just to get to level set to see if we're in. Do you believe that Iran is in pursuit of a nuclear weapon?
I believe the intelligence that Tulsi put out just a couple months ago that they don't have a nuclear weapon.
I just want to see if, so do you believe, and I get it, I'm just trying to, do you believe that they are actually pursuing a nuclear weapon?
I think they're trying to pursue deterrence because they feel threatened. The Iranian government has been under attack since 1979, and we have been a major participant.
Daryl, why do they sponsor terrorism around the world? Is that defensive too?
I think in their eyes it is.
Okay, but let me ask you this. My other two more quick questions. When they chant "Death to America," does that worry you at all?
It doesn't worry me. Every enemy that we've ever had, even when the Soviet Union had all those nuclear bombs pointed at us, they used to call us the evil empire, and we used to call them the evil empire. We can solve certain things without causing a sectarian conflict and a civil war in a country.
Fair enough. Last question for you. If Iran signed some sort of peace deal, ceasefire, whatever you want to call it, do you trust them to live up to the terms of the agreement?
I believe they'll abide by any agreement that we can enforce.
Okay, that's all. I rest my case.
Hey, I mean, just to kind of go along the lines of this, Haley, and that's super fascinating. I had not seen the poll, so thank you for sharing that. Under what conditions would you be concerned about American involvement, or are there any? At this point, do you feel like it is worth it to take out this regime?
So I am pretty practical. I'm trying to think practically right now. I know that Israel needs the B-52 to take out basically Fordo, which is the mothership of the nuclear program. That's what I think that Israel needs to focus on, is the nuclear. I hear regime change. I hear it in the Israeli news and American news. I mean, while I welcome it, I do not think that this should be the strategy of Israel. I don't think that unless there are any type of indication from within Iran that the people are ready for it, which I don't think we have seen enough of it yet. And I hope, as an Israeli, I hope that there is, because I know the suppressive regime, but I think that regime change would be a mistake, big mistake from the Israelis' part. I think that they should stick to the nuclear facilities. And I don't understand why they can't just get the B-52 on loan for like a day and then bring it back.
Well, a couple of reasons. One, you can't fly that plane unless you're very, very highly trained. Number one. Number two, they wouldn't care. Once you lend it to them, quote unquote, the Iranians will see that as
right.
You might as well flown it yourself.
Don't you think I take your second point, but don't you think the Israelis have a secret plan, a secret program that's been going on for years to learn how to fly B-52s? I'd be surprised if they didn't.
I also think that plan A doesn't work. Israel has plan B, C, D, E, F, and G. I think that they're very heavily going in on plan A to finish it quickly. But wouldn't be surprised if there wasn't.
Can't Mossad talk their way into the facility, go downstairs, throw a bunch of grenades and leave?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Kind of like Star Wars with the Death Star. You just shoot something in.
Just to clarify, do you two know each other from two-way or some other way?
We know each other from two-way, and
there's
an after party every day.
Yeah.
Basically twice a day after each show, we all get on and talk about the topics, and me and Daryl have become very friendly. It's feisty, but it's really always in good spirits.
All right. Well,
Great. The beauty of it.
Great to have you both on and part of the two-way community. We're very grateful to you, and we hope you come back. And again, you both speak for millions, tens of millions, whatever it is, and really glad to have you two such articulate folks explain your point of view. So thank you both.
Thank you, guys,
for having us.
Sean, what do you have on tonight?
Tonight it's Seth. Tonight is Seth Keshel. If you haven't seen Seth's data that he puts out on voter registration, it's worth a look. He's got a great Substack. Newt Gingrich, huge fan. I've had him on the show before during the election cycle, but he's done an amazing registration analysis of all of the key states and how they're moving heading into the midterms, especially today. By the way, primary day in Virginia here for the Democrats. And I think, again, if you haven't seen Seth on my show during the election cycle, it's worth tuning in. He walks through every state with pure numbers in terms of registration and movement, and models everything out in a way that's garnered the attention of Gingrich, the White House, top campaign operatives around the country. But he's going to break down where we are state by state.
Okay, sounds awesome. All right, 3 2-ways tonight. First, 6 o'clock Eastern, 2 of the smartest strategists in either party, or maybe both parties. Ed Rogers, Republican, Steve Elmendorf, Democrat. We'll talk about what's going on with Israel and Iraq and Iran, as well as all the domestic implications. So join us at 6 o'clock for that. 7 o'clock, Michael Moynihan, the Moynihan Report. Michael is joined by Roya, get this right, Akakian, author of Assassins of the Turquoise Palace. They'll be talking about the past, present, and future of Iran. So please join Michael at 7. 7:30, it is the debut of something we're really pleased to be involved in with Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, the owner of the Los Angeles Times, one of the country's world's foremost experts on cancer. Cancer Decoded is meant to be a new kind of two-way, to bring people together to create community around challenges that people face when they're dealing with any kind of cancer. Our guest tonight is Dr. Simon Kagi to discuss brain tumors, and we'll take your questions on all topics related to cancer. So please join us tonight. This is the first episode. Every Tuesday at 7:30 Eastern Time, the doctor and I will be in to try to explain the latest science related to cancer, the latest research, but also to hear from you and your stories about how you have dealt with it in your family or for yourself. We've done some of these as part of two-way tonight, and this is a launch of a new program. So eager to have you join us tonight. Please do. You can, hold on. I know I have more information than I'm telling you, so give me a moment. You can go to, Noah, you'll help me out here. Having trouble finding.
Two-way.tv.
Two-way.tv. If you want to be part of the conversation, not watch on YouTube or X, you can go to two-way.tv and sign up to be part of the conversation, be able to raise your hand and ask questions. And again, there'll be lots of information, but also hopefully comfort for those who've dealt with this or have dealt with this in the past or dealing with it now. Thank you all for being part of the program, for being part of the two-way community. Sean, Dan, and I will be back in 23 hours. And I'm telling you, the world's going to look very different in 23 hours. So we look forward to meeting with you then. Have a good day, everybody.
Spidey